Hey there, Mary Sheila here from BioYouth Labs. Today I want to talk about the joints and inflammation and pain that you might feel and some support around that regarding the food that we intake. And just to let you know, I am standing amongst this beautiful rhododendron, if you're wondering what flower that is behind me, in the springtime in Northern California. Now, as we age, for many reasons, maybe a life well lived, maybe accidents or any kind of degeneration, we might start to feel more pain and inflammation in our body, specifically in our joints. And we want to see what we can do to bring that level of pain down and really bring that level of inflammation down. Inflammation is an immune response, so it's the body responding to something. So the question is, what is it maybe that it's responding to, and can I lower that level of inflammation in the body? Now, I will say that lowering inflammation in the body is a very multi-pronged approach, because even if we stay up too late and we really are not prioritizing our sleep, or we're really stressed, or we're drinking too much alcohol, or we're eating inflammatory foods or foods we have allergies to, or we're not drinking enough water, there's a lot of reasons why we might have inflammation. Maybe we have an infection or a pathogen that lives within our body, and or an autoimmune condition. So there's tons of reasons why we could have inflammation. And it's always a good idea to look at, what in our life can we bring back into balance, right? If again, we're not sleeping enough, or if we're not moving enough, or what is our food intake and our water intake, right? Some of the simple things, but sometimes those simple things make a huge difference. And if we think of inflammation as an immune response, we want to think about how can we lower that immune response. And so we always want to look for the triggers. Now, I want to talk about a couple things that we can do in that sense. And one of them is maybe foods that we have an allergy to, right? So that might mean getting an allergy test, but it also might mean eliminating foods that we know are common allergens and cause inflammation. And so that could be things like gluten, dairy. Sometimes it's peanuts and nuts for people, and corn and soy. So there's lots of different things. And some people know what their allergen is. Some people know, like, oh, I have an allergy to eggs or to gluten or to fill in the blank. And so if we eliminate those triggers, we're going to lower our trigger inflammatory response that we might be having. So that's always a good idea, to really take a look at those foods. And then another way we can help to lower inflammation is add things in. And a big family of foods that are actually very nutrient dense, even though we just use a little bit of them, they're very nutrient dense, and they're very anti-inflammatory and very digestively and metabolically active. And those are herbs and spices. Those tend to, because they get our own juices going, they tend to have an anti-inflammatory effect, because when all of our metabolic hormones are working and we have our optimal secretions, it makes it so the immune system is a little bit less exposed to all of the foods that we're eating, and it helps to thicken the lining of the digestive tract. And some are inherently very anti-inflammatory, like ginger and curcumin, that are kind of in the same family, or turmeric, but the medicine of turmeric is curcumin. There's lots of bitter herbs and even greens that lend themselves to be anti-inflammatory, and greens in general, and non-starchy carbohydrate vegetables. So all those colorful veggies in the garden, those tend to be lower in, or they tend to be cooling. They like cool us down. And that's because the minerals that are really present in those greens, like magnesium and calcium and a couple other ones, they actually are kind of cooling. They cool us down. They're alkalizing. So that sometimes we need to think of inflammation as like a fire. And it's like, oh, how can I cool down this fire? So that would be my advice in this short video, is really the importance of looking at and examining the foods that we eat. Oftentimes when I have a client and they're like, oh, I love and it's like some food, maybe it's cheese. And I'm like, yeah, you might have an allergy to it. Because when we love something and we can't imagine our life without it, there's often even like an addictive response to a food allergen. So when we eliminate those foods, the other thing that happens, it's, and this is important to even think of it this way. It's not so much like, oh, I have to give this food up. It's more like, what can I eat? What can I enjoy? And that's another really important way of looking at it. Like, oh, look at all these beautiful vegetables I get to eat, instead of like, I can't have anything. I mean, there is some mourning when we give things up. I admit it is sad when we're like, I can't have that. But we gain a lot when we are able to feel better. I did have a friend once who had, I could see the inflammation in her fingers, and she's a lot older than me. And I could see it. And I asked her if she would consider giving up nightshades for a little while. Nightshades are things like tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplants, even goji berries and ashwagandha. Those are all nightshades. And for some people, they can't break them down completely, and they can inflame the joints. We often see that in certain kinds of arthritis and even autoimmune types of arthritis. So I asked her to give them up, and she did not want to, because she had a little greenhouse full of them, which it's hard to tell somebody to give them up in the middle of summer, right? So they're not really as available yet in the garden or a farmer's market, at least where I live right now. So she finally did. And she called me one day and she says, I'm so mad at you. My wedding ring flew off in the shower. She didn't lose it, but it flew off in the shower. And I was like, why are you blaming me for that? And she said, because I did a trial and I gave up the nightshades, and my finger swelling dramatically went down and my fingers felt so much better. So you'd be surprised sometimes of what doing something like that can do for you. So play with your food. Be flexible, be willing to experiment, do what you can to support and nourish your body. And that's because that's the name of the game. We have this human form we got to take care of in this life, right? So I hope this is helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Please subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.